Hello, welcome to MTH1W, an approach that works. My name is Jennifer.Shields, and I'm a mathematics teacher at Effie Medill Secondary School located in Wingham. Before I begin, I just want to point out that a lot of my resources for activities and worksheets have come from LKDSB, and I will provide the link to that site at the end. All right, so the general outline for what we're going to be talking about today is going over different strategies that will ensure that we activate prior knowledge. We're going to talk about creating low floor, high ceiling scenarios, creating thin slice materials for a more constructivist approach, creating opportunity for observation and conversation, and talking about how we can record that data, releasing the responsibility of consolidating learning to the students, and increasing accountability for work completion, and also provide a mechanism for formal assessment that honors all pathways. So you probably are familiar with this idea, this Minds On. So it takes about 2 minutes to set up. It lasts for 5 to 10 minutes, and typically you'll have one question on the board, and you might have to read it out, or you may give prompts. And I would rate this recipe for success at about a 2 out of 5 stars. In order to do something a little bit better, I would recommend switching it up a little bit. I call it a warm-up. It's essentially the same thing, but it takes about the same amount of time. 2 minutes lasts about the same amount of time. But instead of just writing one question, you're going to write 3 questions on the board, typically based off of yesterday's learning. You're going to label them mild, medium, and spicy. You're going to give each student a quarter-sized piece of scrap paper, which we all have tons of, to write their answer, name, and the date on. And you don't need to read out the questions or provide prompts because the mild one is pretty easy. After they have their answer, they're going to take it up and they're going to put it into the right basket. And in my room, I have 3 popcorn baskets I got from Dollarama, and I also have 3 hoop shop baskets also from Dollarama to put them in. The reason that you do this is because we want to make sure that we're activating the prior knowledge for everyone in the room, not just a few people. This is a great opportunity to flash back old concepts to keep them fresh. You can just throw anything up there that you want. And it also gives yourself 5 minutes to do attendance, or maybe you need to check in with a particular student. Because the students actually get up to put their answers into a correct bucket, it gives them an opportunity to actually move around, which is super important for regulating learning. So this strategy I would give a 5-star rating to. It's much more effective than a single question that they write down into their notebook. In order to up the ante a little bit, I create some buy-in, and I do this by doing a draw on Friday. So on Friday, we'll take the buckets off the wall and we will sift through them. We'll pull out one answer from each bucket at random. If the answer is correct, then the students get to choose a prize from my treasure box, and this box is filled with stuff that I've collected at different conferences. It's swag, it's maybe some treats, it's maybe some stationery items, it's a big variety of things, and I fill it up. And so if you are the winner of the draw for the mild bucket, you get to pick one thing out of the treasure box. And if you win the draw from the medium bucket, then you get to pick 2 things out of the treasure box. But if you have challenged yourself and you've put in a correct answer for a spicy question, then you can pick 3 things out of the bucket. And this works well because I see a lot of students challenging themselves because they want to try the hard one. And I make sure that the mild one is easy enough that everybody can do it, so everybody's able to do it. So this is an example of the one that we did a couple days ago. So even if we don't totally understand what's going on here for different strategies, we can always do guess and check for this mild one. The medium one, we need to maybe understand a bit about negative integers in order to be able to answer it properly. And then the spicy one is going to require maybe a couple steps for me to really figure it out. And it's absolutely okay if the kids are working together, if they're asking questions, if they're looking for help. Like, all of this is great math conversation. It's not a competition. They often will check with each other or maybe get help to do the medium one, or maybe I'll help them. And while this is going on, I'm supposed to be doing my attendance or maybe talking to a student who is needing a private moment. And so it's just a really easy way to start the class. I also always leave this for supply teachers so that it gets them right into the swing of things, right back in the regular motion when I'm not there. Okay, typically after you've done your minds on or your hook, you might have a lesson. This probably has taken you about 20 minutes to prepare. It's going to last 30 to 45 minutes. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be standing at the board. You're going to be teaching an algorithm, its rules. You're going to give a bunch of different examples. You're going to start with some easy stuff. You're going to move to some hard stuff. You know what this is. Like it's the I do, we do, you do model. And I would rate this about a 1 out of 5 stars. Really, there's just too many different learners in the room in order to have this be an effective strategy. Instead, I would suggest thin sliced NPVS. So this takes about the same amount of time to set up. It's going to last the same amount of time, but instead of a poor rating, I'd give this a 4 out of 5 rating. And so how this works is you're going to have students go in groups of 2 to 4 at the boards to a non-permanent vertical surface. And I do let the students choose their own partners. They're sitting in an assigned seat. So they're sitting with somebody that I've chosen for them to sit with when I need them to sit and listen or sit and do independent work. And when they're at the boards, I want them to be more comfortable collaborating. So I let them work with each other. Of course, there is merit to random grouping or assigned grouping. Typically, I allow for a grouping of choice. Sometimes I do switch it up, but that's typically what I'm doing right now. And so I'm going to give each group the first sheet. This sheet needs to be so easy that I don't need to give any instructions. And they're going to get started with their whiteboards or their chalk or whatever they have to work with. And I'm going to go around the room with the next sheet in my back pocket, and I'm going to give it to them when they're ready for it. And they are ready for it when everybody at that board can explain to me what just happened. And so in order to ensure that, I tell them that everybody at this board needs to be able to explain everything. And then when I get there, I am going to randomly call on one person, and it's going to be a different person next time. So person number 1 tells me what they have learned or how they've done it. And then next time I give them slip 2, and then I come by again, and a different person is going to explain to me next time. So another thing that's key is that the final slip is far beyond the curriculum expectations. This means that nobody can actually complete the whole activity before time's up. And the curriculum expectation is going to probably show up around slip 4. So why does this work? So we know that non-permanent vertical surfaces create safer opportunities to try ideas. Kids are just more comfortable writing something down when they can quickly erase it. When they're standing up, they just are more likely to engage in dialogue or try things out and draw a picture, use multiple representations or whatever. We get a lot of math talk. Because we have so many different entry points, we've got this low floor, high ceiling opportunity so that everybody can be working at the whole time and the group can be moving at their own rate. So if they're not ready to move on to the next level yet, they don't have to. And if they are ready, they're not waiting. So everybody's moving at their own pace and everybody's working at their own time. Because I'm going around and talking to everybody, I've got a huge opportunity for observation and conversation. And we'll talk more later about how that gets recorded. So let's look at an example. So this is for learning objective 2, which we'll talk more about what that means later. And you can see here that this first slip, 6 plus question mark equals 13, is super easy. And pretty much everybody in grade 9, unless they're on a modified program, can be successful at this. And then I'm going to swap out this question mark with a blank box. So they would have seen this back in their junior grades. And then finally, I'm going to swap out the box for a blank or for a variable. And I'm just trying to reinforce this idea that a question mark, a blank box, or a variable all represent the same thing. I've got nothing but addition and positive integers here in this first slice. Move on to the second slice, and you can see it gets a little bit harder. Now I've got a negative integer in there, and I've also shown multiplication in a different format. I've got 10x, or 10 x's equals 70. And so this is when we kind of start to formalize that conversation or that math language around what it means to have a coefficient in a variable. So I would say here that I really want all of the groups to get through stage 4 and or maybe stage 5 because we're looking at negative integers and a more complicated rearranging of these rules. And then into 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, these become increasingly difficult. And I often don't get students who go much beyond 7 or 8, where you're using all of the digits 1 to 9 to fill this in so that the answer is a given value or whatever. Okay, so this is probably something that you're very familiar with. This is classic note taking. It takes me quite a long time. It takes me probably 20 to 30 minutes to create a note that I want the students to record, and it takes them probably about the same amount of time to write it all down. And I would really give this strategy a 2 out of 5 stars. Like, it is valuable for some, and it's definitely necessary for certain concepts more than others. And I might even give them a photocopy. It might even be a fill in the blanks. And the reason that we do this is because students do need to have clear and correct examples to follow along. However, this is, just to preface this is new learning for me. So I'm trying to have the students write a summary. And I've done this a few times this past semester. This takes 0 minutes to set up. It lasts 10 to 15 minutes, maybe a bit longer, depending on what you're talking about and how much time you spend consolidating. So this is going to happen right after you're done your thin slice lesson. So students are still at the board, they've done their board work, and they're going to summarize their learning into a 4-quadrant grid, and they're still at the boards. So this can be a Frere model, or it can be a variation of that. There's no rules about what you need to be putting on here. But what it should include for sure is it should include the topic and an easy problem that you give. It could include rules and tips that maybe they come up with on their own. It could maybe include a tricky problem of their own choosing. It could include an alternative representation, so maybe a graph or a diagram, or maybe an application problem that maybe they want to include for their own reference. The reason why this is good is because, just like in English class, students should be able to write their own summary of learning. It doesn't really do anybody much good if we assign students a text to read and then we also give them a summary, because that's robbing them of that consolidation piece, that making connections and really thinking about what was important here and what was not. And sometimes in math, I think we over control the need to make sure that they have exactly down what I want them to have down. But if you compare it to an English class and you think about, okay, well, they read that book and this was what really stuck out to them. So this was what was really important for their learning in that scenario. There's a lot of flexibility in how math is represented or how it's applied or how it can be communicated. And so just like in English class, I think it's wise to give the students that flexibility to record their learning in a way that makes sense to them, so that when they look back at it, they're able to use their notes. Okay, so when I do this, I have different students recording their learning at the boards. And I have only done this a few times. This is new this semester. And so I try to highlight different thinking from different groups in order to make sure that we know that there's a bunch of different ways we can get at this. And so after I've kind of found and talked through a board that I like, then the students are going to record this into their own notebook. And in my class, they do have a dedicated notebook for math. So this is a potential example of what it might look like. This is the classic Frere model. There are, like I said, like you can have anything in any quadrant. The idea is just to essentially give them some structure so that they can start making this independently and making a summary of something that of their learning.